cell phone, it's great. Remembering only one story per customer. And oh, by the way, we took a Bell family Halloween photo. It's up on the website, right in the upper middle. If you go to coastcoastam.com, you'll see it. We had fun doing that. The three of us. By the way, for those who are inquiring, all cats are fine. All our cats are just fine. Yeti, Abby, and our import Dolly, doing very, very well indeed. So a picture of the three of us, myself, Aaron, and of course Asia. That's on the website. And then if you click on the webcam, there's a picture of just Asia there that I took the other day. I think really, really cute. But once again, this is Coast to Coast, folks. So let me run over it one last time. One story per caller. One ghost story. Your very best effort. If you can do it on a landline instead of a cell phone, well, bless you. Remembering you've got to let it, we're not going to use screeners. So that means let it ring and ring and ring and ring. And that way you'll not be charged for any on-hold time or anything of that sort. We'll pick it up when we're ready to talk to you. And only the very scariest stories. I think this program has established over decades now, that there is indeed some sort of consciousness, some sort of continuation after death. Now, the nature of that continuation, we have not established. But with EVPs, with other proof, we've established pretty well, I think, that indeed there is some continuation following physical death. Ghosts would be certainly one mainline piece of proof of that continuation. So if you have a good ghost story, here we are. Now, if you're west of the Rockies, the number to call is 1-800-618-8255. 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, 1-800-825-5033. Remember, I will answer the phone, so it is up to you to have the radio turned all the way down right away as soon as you hear me answer. First-time callers, area code 818-501-4721. Area code 818-501-4721. Wildcard lines, we've got several of those. Pretty good chance to get through. At area code 818-501-4109. 818-501-4109. Outside the country, the international line, call up your operator, have her connect you no matter where you are in the world to our toll-free international line, which is 1-800-893-0903. 1-800-893-0903. In a moment, Ghost to Ghost AM. Let's begin with something Kathy sent in from Springfield, Illinois. Art, let me preface this by saying my grandfather and I had always been very close. I know he would never let any harm come to me in any way. My grandfather passed away in February of 1978. He had a heart attack in the bathroom of his home at about 3 a.m. My grandmother was home alone. We took turns staying with her after the funeral. About 3 weeks later, I was reading on the bed in the spare bedroom. Something caused me to look up. Coming out of the wall was what looked like my grandfather. He was transparent. You could see right through him, but he still had form. Words can never express how horrible he looked. He looked like he had dug his own way out of the grave. He had on a pinstripe suit, the one he was buried in. He had what appeared to be Spanish moss dripping from him. I live in Springfield, Illinois. Believe me, we don't have Spanish moss around here. I began to scream and get off the bed and run when he suddenly disappeared. Now, I didn't tell anybody because I was afraid people think I was crazy. This would be the end of the story, but 20 years ago, I found out my son had seen the same identical apparition. As close as we can estimate it, it was about 3 months later, and in the front bedroom of our house, other other family members have seen dark forms standing over the bathroom sink doors and lights that turn on and off, and all this for no apparent reason. We're now 58 and 40, respectively, and we'll never forget the sight. Was it a ghost? A demon? I'll never know, but I know we saw it. I believe. And of course, that's what happens after you see for yourself. You believe. Let's go to the first-time caller line and say good morning. You have arrived at Ghost to Ghost as number 1.
Hi, Art. How are you doing?
Very well indeed, thank you.
I am so glad to talk to you. I racked my brain for a ghost story, and I couldn't think of it. What I really want to ask you.
Oh, no, this is ghost stories only. You don't have ghost story. You shouldn't be calling.
I know, but I wanted to ask your AOL.com so I could get a picture of you and your family.
All right. Well, there's a picture of our family on the website right now, and that would be coasttocoastam.com. Now, you see, the very first call was a violation of the rules. Ghost stories only. Ghost stories only. I'm trusting in you tonight because this is on screen. I'm just putting you on the air. Now, if something is said that shouldn't go on the air, I can certainly eliminate it, but this is on screen. That means it's the honor system. So ghost stories only. West of the Rockies, you are on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Raul.
Yes, sir.
I'm from Tacoma, Washington.
All right.
And to just tell you a real quick story. Probably about 20 years ago, I was living with this friend of mine in this duplex. And I was just out of the blue, all of a sudden, I started getting all these scratches on my like soft parts of my body, like underneath my legs where my calves are.
Big wide scratches or like cat scratches or?
It looked like there was at least always 4 like rakes. It looked like I was getting raked on my back by, my friends would joke and laugh, hey, what did your girlfriend, making jokes like that. And I was saying, hey, I don't know what I'm getting here, and then my dad being in the medical field, he said, well, it's probably just some, psoriasis or something like that. And I'm thinking, well, I don't, and then I caught it kind of made me think more about it. I saw like this show with like Spock on it. It was kind of like, that's what was the only thing back in the 80s, that was like about paranormal stuff.
Were these like human scratches? I mean, like human nails or
yeah,
what?
It was like nail scratches, just like, and then they would almost pop up almost to the point where it would almost blood would but then they would go away.
Did you ever feel it when it happened?
Just very, very, very vaguely. Very, very vaguely.
Was this occurring when you were asleep or?
It could just occur at any time. We could just be sitting there at that time in the early 80s. We were sitting there watching some MTV or something, just sitting around hanging out. And all of a sudden I just said, hey, look, guys. And I pulled down my shirt and right there behind my neck and these rape marks, and then it caught like I say, that show, with that narrator, and they showed the same similar incident to this guy that was just in like Boston, and
So how did it resolve? Did it just go away or what?
Finally, when we moved from that duplex, it just went away. And then finally, as years went on, people would say, yeah, you were a big mother, like the stigmata, and I didn't even know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about all this stuff until I started listening to your show. And then I started hearing more about it. I think, one of these days, I'm going to call Art. I'm going to do it. Sure hearing up. I get the first call.
This was, the second call. This was your night then. Scratches. Wonder what that could be. Not to say for sure that it's a ghost, but human scratches on the body just suddenly appearing. Barely felt when they occur, but then turning up as big wells. East of the Rockies, good morning, you're on the air. Hi there. You're on a cell phone, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
So that means your story has to be extra good.
It is very good.
All right, go ahead.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're right on the air, yes.
Okay. This is why I believe in ghosts. For 10 years, I was stationed at F.E. Warren Air Force Base, Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Yes, sir.
I was a security policeman, and we did maintenance, and we did security for all the missiles that were in the missile field. There were thousands of people that have been through this Air Force base, and all of them, I bet, can repeat this story. All right, the story goes, one day, a missile maintenance crew was out in the field. While they were working on the missile, a set of arms clamped a man. If you can imagine sticking up your finger in the air and grabbing it with a pair of pliers, that's what these arms are like. Because...
Wait a minute. Why would everybody know about this story?
Because when you're finished, you're going to understand this.
All right.
Name the story. But I've never heard it repeated. So, this missile was held in place by these large clamps because it can take a direct hit from the nuclear missile. So these things are very, very solid.
Right.
So while he was working on the missile, for some reason, this clamp activated and pinched the man almost in half.
God.
So very quickly, they made a call back to the base, and as quickly as possible by helicopter, they flew out a medical crew. The man wasn't doing very well. His blood pressure was beginning to drop. So they asked him, is there anything that we can do for you? Because it doesn't look like that you're going to make it. The man said, yes, I would like to be able to tell my wife one more time that I love her. So they arranged to make a radio call to his wife. And he was able to speak to her one last time. After the phone call was finished, they said, all right, we're going to release this arm from you. The doctor told him, I don't think I'm going to be able to stop the bleeding. And this may be the end. So he said he was ready. They released the arm. And as the doctor said, the man died on the spot. The place where he died was Missile Silo Kilo 11. All right, as I said, these missile silos can take a direct hit from a nuclear missile. They have a 10-ton concrete door on top of the missile.
Right.
On the outside of the missile, there's nothing but a fence. They don't worry about people getting inside, so all you need is a fence. But there are alarms. There are alarms on top of the ground and below the ground. After this incident happened, almost every night, the alarm underneath the 10-ton door inside the missile, where it was impossible for anyone to go, would go off almost every single night.
Good Lord.
And the men would have to respond and go out there and check outside the fence all around, and then they would have to open the hole and go down where the missile was.
So he was still there.
So they say.
Yeah, I really appreciate the story. Thank you. I've heard similar stories. There was I think it was Law and Order, very famous Law and Order series in which a man, in a similar fashion, was squeezed by a subway train. And they actually got the train stopped, and it hit him about midline, in other words, right across the stomach. And as long as that subway was in place, much as the man just talked about the arms around the missile, the blood flow or the blood pressure in the upper part of the body stayed roughly, kept him alive. But the very moment, of course, they moved the train or changed anything, blood pressure immediately dropped and the man passed away. So what that man just had to say about Kilo 11 was entirely possible. What followed, with that alarm going off on a nightly basis, is, it's why we're here talking about ghosts. Many times, spirits appear, and this is a part of life after death that I would love to have solved, because I think it kind of makes us all a little nervous. It sometimes appears as though a spirit, or an echo of a spirit, if you will, remains continually setting off alarms or people getting a glimpse of the same thing again and again and again, like a terrible tape loop, like something that wasn't finished. Wildcard line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Hi, how are you? It is a pleasure to talk to you.
It's good to have you too, but you're also on a cell phone.
Yeah, I hope the service is not too bad for you. We'll clear up.
Not too good at the moment, but go ahead and give it a try.
Okay, my name is Herbert. I'm a truck driver.
Yes, sir.
I was in the military, stationed in Mayport, Florida. Lived on base housing. And we had a baby goat. The wife started hearing it at different times. It would cry. And when I started hearing it, I'm sure you're familiar with footy pajamas.
With what kind of pajamas?
We call them footy pajamas. It's got the feet.
Oh, sure. Okay. I know.
Just up the middle. And I had two small boys, and sometimes at night I would hear the footy pajamas coming into my room. And right there at my headboard, that thing was one of my sons. And I reach out, and neither one of them be there, and I get up to go check on them. They be down to sleep. So it was kind of funny at times, and just good. And then one night I heard the footy pajamas coming to bed, and all my hair is staying on here right now. And I felt the foot of the bed go down. So I knew it was one of my sons hiding in bed with him. And I raised up, and the moonlight was coming through the window, and there wasn't nothing there whatsoever. And I couldn't scream, I couldn't holler, I was just terrified. And my wife, she was a real light sleeper. Anytime you touch her, she wakes up to see what I needed.
Sure.
I started shaking her on it. I almost tossed her out of the bed. And just out of the blue, something come over me. I don't know what willed it over me, but I lost all emotion, all feeling. I wasn't scared, I wasn't anxious, I wasn't nothing. And something without the feeling of touch just made me lay back down and as I hit my pillow, I was out.
Were you paralyzed?
No, I mean, at one point when the feeling came over me, I didn't have no emotion. It's hard to describe. It was almost like a void. I had no feelings whatsoever.
Okay, so this was not sleep paralysis of any kind.
Oh no, I was wide awake because I was wide awake running some things in my head because I was going up for advanced exam the next day.
Yes.
And I was wide awake and I was running over these figures in my head so I could do good on my advanced test the next day. So I wasn't even asleep when this happened, but I
got it. All right. Well, listen, we're coming up on a break here. So I appreciate your call, and we'll continue with ghost stories. I've got a number that have been sent in to me, and I'll kind of pepper the program with those. But otherwise, we're depending on all of you non-cell phone people to call in. Ghost to Ghost AM, actually. On-screen calls, we're just picking them up as we get them tonight. But we do have some rules. One story per caller. Please, folks, don't use cell phones. The last caller was an example of why I'm making that request. For a story to be good, you got to be able to understand it, right? And please, only, if you will, the very scariest of stories. That if it didn't scare you, it probably won't scare us. Those are the numbers. Love to hear from you, and we will continue in a moment. Dear Art, this is not going to be the scariest story on tonight, but I guarantee every word of it is true. I'm a retired police officer. I've never had a supernatural encounter, seen a UFO. The following story is the closest I've come to a truly strange experience. Around 1990, at nighttime, a robber held up a small Asian bar, which was tucked into a mostly industrial area of the city. Solo patrol officer happened quickly upon the scene, confronted the robber, who was walking on foot in a nearby alley. The robber turned, smiled, and quickly crouched and reached for his gun in his waistband. In a classic one-on-one Western-style shootout, the type seen on TV but really actually experienced by most police officers, the solo patrolman kept his cool, killed the robber on the spot. I was working that night, was on scene along with several other officers within minutes of the shooting. I eventually left to handle other calls, but a short while thereafter I was dispatched to the hospital The robber's body was taken to do a follow-up report and secure evidence. I was in the hospital room where the robber is lying dead, shirtless upon a bed. His arms lay flat upon bed, palms up alongside his legs. There was a hospital attendant in the room with me. I had 2 plastic bags with which I was going to bag the dead suspect's hands for later GSR tests, stands for gunshot residue, to help determine that he had in fact fired a weapon. Well, as I opened the bag and leaned over him to bag his right hand, the dead man's arm lifted straight up in the air in a perfect 90-degree angle with his elbows still on the bed and his right hand now pointed toward the ceiling. The attendant and I both gasped and stared at each other, and the attendant said something that you can't say on Coast to Coast. Well, that's it, Art. I won't embellish anything. Nothing further happened. Of course, it was a dead man's spasm, right? But it was the only dead man's spasm I ever saw. And the timing of it, in that I was literally about to reach for the same hand, was truly eerie. Even for a police officer, I figured he was either trying to cooperate in the end, or else he was going for one last desperate grab for his gun. And he goes on to give me the names of those involved in the city, and I won't relate that. West of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Is this Coast to Coast?
Yes, it is. Ghost to Ghost.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. I've got a cat ghost story.
All right.
About a cat that passed away.
Yes, sir.
Basically said goodbye with the motion sensor light of the porch, on the porch when I was inside.
Yes.
And it was crazy because it freaked me out in the beginning that the motion sensor was going off and there was no one around. But
well, sometimes insects can set them off.
Oh no, this wasn't set that sensitive. Like it could be a person walking by or a car. But I think this was the way of the cat saying goodbye, and I'm okay because it had been hit by a car the day before.
Oh, I'm sorry. It could be. Various things appear to us, and I'm not sure if our brain makes the connection because it wants to make the connection because we want to be able to say goodbye. We want to be able to say I love you or one last thing. And so sometimes our brain makes that connection. Sometimes perhaps there's a little more to it. East of Make That West of the Rockies, you're on the line. Air, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Candy, and I'm calling from Sacramento.
Yes, Candy.
Well, my story is a pretty scary one. I haven't told many people this throughout my lifetime. I'm 36 now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the weather was hot, so it must have been around June or August in the summer months from school. And I was in the 6th grade. And the family was on vacation and at home. I didn't go with them wherever they went to. I can't remember that now. But Grandpa stayed with me, and he was in the living room, and I was coloring on at the dining room table. And I had one of these old organs in my room. And down the hallway, I could hear this music coming from the organ, and I knew I didn't leave it on. And it didn't play by itself.
Right.
And it was beautiful yet eerie. And I kept coloring, and I thought, well, it's going to end anytime soon, but it kept going. And I kept more curious about it. So when I went down the hallway, there was this chill in the air. And Grandpa had told me a couple of months previously that if I were to experience anything scary, just to call on the name of Jesus, and everything would be all right. And I was getting scared, or by the moment I kept walking up the hallway to my room, and I called on the name of Jesus, but it didn't go away.
Did you get into the room?
I got so close to the doorway that the music was blasting my ears. And what happened was I didn't know what to do, and I didn't want to go back and get Grandpa because I thought I could handle this by myself. Then
I can hear you. I can actually hear the fear in your voice as you're telling this.
I've been listening since 1998 to you and George Norrie, and this is the first time that I've ever been able to get onto the radio to tell my experience.
Okay, so what finally happened? Did it just stop or what?
No, when I turned into the doorway real fast, like, there was this thing that I can't describe to anybody, but I have drawn pictures of it to...
Okay, we'll try. You're going to have to give it a try. This thing,
yes.
non-human thing. I guess if it was human, you wouldn't say thing, would you?
No, it was unearthly. I have no formal description of how to put into words what it looked like, but it was red, and it was glowing, and it must have been a demon that I saw.
Did it have a form, a body, arms, legs, that kind of thing, or any appendages at all?
Yes, and it was using its hand-like fingers on my organ player.
Yikes.
And it looked straight at me with yellow eyes.
Yellow eyes.
And
red with yellow eyes.
yeah, it was the most unbelievable, undescribable being. And I'm shaking right now, but
I can hear it.
it challenged me at the age of 6 years old. So I said, in the name of Jesus Christ, be gone, I command you. And it lifted its head up like it had never been told this before and just vanished.
Whew. All right, well, that's some story. That's some story, and those are some words from a 6-year-old. I really appreciate your call.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for making it. Take care. Yellow eyes, huh? Listen, I've got a picture up on the website you might want to see. I'm pretty picky when it comes to so-called ghost photographs. I don't latch on to just any, but this was sent to me by Robert. It arrived about a week and a half ago or so. It's obviously taken in an ICU room in a hospital in Colorado. And it was just a nurse testing a new camera, testing the flash in a new camera. Nobody else in the room, and yet if you look in the mirror, you will clearly see somebody dressed in what appears to be perhaps a uniform, sort of half there and half gone. It looks like an old uniform to me. Looks like whoever this is has been around for some time. This has to be one of the best ghost photographs I think I've ever seen, so you might want to go take a look at that. Again, from a Colorado ICU room. And Robert, I want to thank you for sending that along. It's really a good one. I can usually pick apart a ghost photograph and say, well, it's this or it's that. But if you look carefully at the mirror, the objects reflected and all the rest of it, there's nothing at all bogus about this one. On the Wildcard line, you are on the air. Good morning.
Yes, Art.
Hello.
This is Lee from Phoenix.
Yes, Lee.
I got a ghost story for you.
Good one?
Well, you beat it to when I was a kid, freshman in high school, and you get to run around with other kids on Friday and Saturday night, dragging the man and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys, an older guy, you got down to the cemetery. He says, the damnedest thing, he says, we was out there a couple of weeks ago with our girlfriends, because sometimes they'd let there and they'd find a place they'd park and make out with their girlfriends.
Mm-hmm.
He says, we got out and we went up there, and he said, there was this one grave that had this enormous
upright headstone that was taller than we were. And the girl could just always I didn't know we were by this one. She said, let's go back to the car. He said, well, why? Because it's hot. He said, what do you mean? She said, if you say it, there's no answer right there. And he said, if you walk up and you stand foot totally on the stroke of midnight and say, hey, old man, what are you doing there? He'll answer you back and he'll say, nothing at all. Anyway, we said to our friend, no, we never heard about it. So he drove us out there right up before us. We were just kind of really nervous. And we did. We walked up to stroke of midnight. So like he said, and that's right. He said, nothing at all.
And you heard that clearly.
Don't you get it, Art?
Yes, I do. Nothing at all.
Thank you, Art.
You're welcome. That's fairly normal in the world of spirits. A repetitive this and repetitive that. You know, I don't think any one of us want to think that that we just sort of hang around in the place where our body is returning to the earth slowly, year by year, and do the same thing over and over again. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Hello.
Yeah. Hi. This is Bill from Southern California.
Hi, Bill.
Yeah, I got a ghost story for you. It deals with Native American burial.
Okay.
You still there?
Yeah, I'm right here. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm an archaeologist. I don't have a PhD, but I do have a master's. And I working on a survey crew, and we found an area that had a lot of broken pottery and whatnot. So we reflected, and we went on, came back to it a couple days later, started excavating, and the equipment failure, like you would not believe. Laptops would go dead. You come out of an area, they come back on. You go back in, they go back off. Generators the same way. The lights and stuff. It was just a crazy deal.
In other words, something was taking all the energy, at least temporarily, from whatever you brought in that had it.
Yes, there was.
Right.
And our little base camp that we had set up, we had a cook and everything. The first night there, our personal equipment we found in trees and scattered all over the place, so we thought it might have been animals or something.
Mm-hmm.
Second night, the cook, he came out the next morning, he was mad because everything scattered all over the place. When we started excavating, we started finding human remains. Well, that brought the Native American in to monitor this area. And this was going on for like almost a week. Finally, we got a hold of one of the elders, and
Usually, archaeologists or anybody else are prohibited from digging in areas of that kind, aren't they?
It depends on what they're going to do. If they're going to put a freeway through, or if they're digging like a pipeline, you know, they got to remove the remains, or they try to reroute it,
Right.
that kind of thing. Well, where we were at, it was going right through the center of the valley, and they couldn't reroute the area. It was for a fiber optic.
Okay, so how did it resolve?
Again?
How did it end?
Oh, how did it end?
Yes.
Well, the elder got a hold of a spiritualist, a shaman, but a spiritualist. And he told us if we wanted to come and go into a sweat box, we could sweat out and do some incantations that he had done. And then once we done that, he gave us each a piece of ribbon, a colored cloth. And he told us to carry one piece with us and tie one piece onto our tent. Those that went, nothing happened. Those that didn't, everything happened over again.
In other words, things scattered, things going off. Got it. Well, once again, I don't think I would go digging in such an area. And usually, as I mentioned, once you begin discovering a Native American artifacts, they stop you from digging almost immediately, and for a very good reason. First time caller line, you're on the air.
Good morning, Art. I just wanted to fill you in on a story that I was lucky enough to experience myself. My name's Chris. I live in Virginia. When I was a child, I was staying over at my aunt's house. We had a furnished basement. It was the middle of the night, about 2 in the morning. I hadn't slept yet, and I made sure to double check to make sure I hadn't slept in this situation. Excuse me. Anyway, while I was sitting there attempting to go to sleep, a lady appeared. You have to understand that the area that I was at also used to be a battlefield in the Civil War. So this lady appeared in a beautiful gown, and a gentleman came up to her. These were full body apparitions, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to ask, completely visible.
Almost solid.
Almost solid, all right.
Yeah, and they were very close to it.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, he was wearing a blue uniform, so obviously I think we have an idea of what side he was on.
Yes.
And they embraced, and they were seemed to be having a romantic interlude, I'd have to call it.
Wow.
All of a sudden, a gentleman in gray appeared in a tattered gray beat-down uniform.
Right.
With bayonet in hand. He ran up on the gentleman in blue and started sticking him.
My God.
Over and over, repeatedly gunning this gentleman with the bayonet. And when I say gunning, I mean it just was hanging off the end of the bayonet kind of gun. It was quite nasty. And then after a few moments of that sticking him, and she, for him freaking out, understandably, poof, vanished.
So it's kind of like you had a north-south battle of manifest right in front of you on all apparently, I guess you would guess, over a woman.
That's the accent. That's the accent. The gentleman in blue, definitely dead. No question about that.
Was all this just visual, or did you hear things as well?
You could hear a little bits and pieces, but not very loud. You know, you could hear, her crying kind of deal, her trying to stop. You could hear a grunt here and there. You could hear a stick occasionally.
And so once all this was over, they all just faded away, huh?
It wasn't even a fade away, it was a poof, gone.
Poof, gone, all right. Well, poof, gone is what we have to be right now. This is Ghost to Ghost AM. One correction, that episode was not Law and Order. The one in which the man was crushed by the train was Homicide: Life on the Street. So that was a few years yet earlier, but it was still an incredible episode. I wonder how many of you remember that. This is Ghost to Ghost AM. Now, listen, everybody, on-screen calls. We're not screening the calls at all, so it's up to you. They've got to be good stories. The show will only be as good as your stories. One story per customer. Please try to use anything but a cell phone. And I still have yet to teach you to use cell phones, so please, if you can, get to a corded phone. Only the scariest stories need apply. We'll be right back. The following is from Bill in Rockford, Illinois. There's a house here in north central Illinois known to the locals simply as the Penfield Place. The house's eerie legacy began back around the turn of the century when a kitchen fire took the lives of two small children and a servant. Next, an undertaker took up residence, whose wife fell headlong down the main staircase there, breaking her back and her neck, killing her instantly. The funeral director's body was discovered a few months later in his own backyard, swaying from the branches of a maple tree where he had hanged himself in despair. Then moved in, and one night, not long after, the young bride, Mara Penfield, went missing. The jealous husband was always suspected in her disappearance, but nothing ever came of it, not until a decade later in the 1940s, when 17-year-old Mara Penfield was finally found again. Her sad remains were unearthed by some workmen in the backyard of her former home, buried beneath that infamous maple. She'd been stabbed, rolled up inside an oriental crutch, appendages dismembered and removed to only God and the killer knows where. Her missing limbs were never found. After that, the house went really bad. Future tenants would experience a frightening presence there, one which loomed over them as they slept and circled the bed, sometimes even touching their extremities inquisitively. The soft voice could be heard whispering, "Am I dead? Am I dead?" And once an abomination was witnessed by a group of New Year's Eve revelers, a hideous shape crawling across the second floor stair landing in the darkness as if searching blind for something. When somebody let out a scream, the form raised up suddenly and glided away, nightmarish and black with no face to speak of. The large dwelling eventually fell victim to neglect and was converted into a tenement room and boarding. But I can distinctly remember once in the 1970s when a young expectant mother living there broke out in a high fever one night and miscarried inside that same shuttered house, giving birth afterward to a stillborn boy at a nearby hospital. A stillborn baby boy, extremely misshapen and underdeveloped. No legs, no arms. The rambling old Penfield place still stands today, decaying and in ruins, a monument to all our very worst fears as human beings. First on caller line, you're on the air. Hello? Yes, hello. Turn your radio off, please.
Hello.
Hi.
Is this Art?
It is.
Hi, Art. This is Judy from Huntsville, Alabama.
Hi, Judy.
I just wanted to tell you a story about a doll.
A doll?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. My mother and Dad bought me a doll. The last one they ever bought me was the size of a 3-year-old child. One night, many years later, I had the doll and standing up in the corner of the bedroom. I was reading a book, and all of a sudden, out of my peripheral vision, I saw something move. And it startled me, of course, and I looked up, and I looked toward the doll, and the doll raised its arm and put it down.
Oh, boy.
Right.
Now, in this modern day, let me just stop you for a moment. I've seen the ads for them. Today they sell dolls that are, like a 3-year-old size, 2 or 3-year-old size, and infant size,
Right.
and they do move, and they do say things. They even memorize the name you give them.
Right, but I'm 58 years old.
I hear you. So there was no name memorized, or there was no movement. This was just a doll.
Just a plain doll, the size of a 3-year-old child.
And you saw her raise her arm.
She raised it up, she put it down. It, of course, terrified me. I broke out in cold sweat. And the only thing I knew to do was to go and pick the thing up and take it and put it in the den. And I did that. Well, the next day, I told my family about it. And, of course, some believed me, some didn't. My mother said, well, I don't want you to do away with the doll because that's the last one we bought you. It's sort of sentimental.
Sure.
She took it over to her apartment. She said, I'll keep it. Okay. Things started happening at her apartment. She woke up one night out of a deep sleep, and she said, standing beside her bed was a dark figure. And the only way she could describe this, it was during Star Wars, was it looked like Darth Vader. But, to me, it was like a demon.
Not the doll, though.
No, it wasn't a doll. It was a dark figure standing beside her bed.
Do you think the doll brought this to her?
I think it did. And also, she had a plant on a plant stand. And I've seen this in other stories before about possession and different things like this. The plant was shaped by itself. And my mother was a very smart woman. She wasn't given to delusions or anything like that. And she started telling me all this stuff. And I said, well, I think we need to get rid of this doll. I don't know what's wrong with it, but I think I'm going to try to get in touch with Ed and Lorraine Warren to try to, see if there's something wrong with this doll.
So did you get rid of it?
Well, I got married. My husband put the doll out in the trash, and they picked it up. So I have no idea where the doll is now, but I hope no little child has the doll.
is probably out just walking around the trash yard somewhere.
I don't know, but it's weird. I mean, I'm a nurse. I'm not a
Oh, I believe you.
person given to delusions or hallucinating or anything like that. But
Trust me, I believe you.
I don't like dolls.
That's why we do these programs. Thank you very much. We do them because these things really do happen. I've had, and I won't go into details, but I've had a few cursed things like dolls sent to me. And some pretty strange stuff happened. People come into the possession of something like what she was just talking about, that doll, and they don't know what to do with it. And so they end up in the old days when I was doing a 5-day, 6-day-a-week show, they'd send them to me, and they would tell me this, whatever it is, I won't go into what it was, is cursed. No, mistakenly, I did keep something for a few days, and what a mistake that was. Good morning, welcome to the Rockies, you're on the air.
Hello? I'm calling about a man under a table.
And you turn your radio off for me, sir. That's...
Yeah, I'm calling about a ghost in Bishop, California, under a bed, under a table.
Under a table or a bed?
A table. I was sleeping in my uncle's sister's house in Bishop, California. We were on vacation, and I was sitting in the living room facing the kitchen. And when I woke up at 3 in the morning, there were voices calling me from the kitchen. I woke up, and everyone was asleep around the living room, and I could see the kitchen. I looked in the kitchen, I got up, I could see somebody under the table calling me with his hand. I could see his dark figure calling me.
Actually, audibly calling you or sort of beckoning you to come?
A guy under the table calling me, like, come here, like, come to the dark side. I'm like, fuck that. I mean.
Okay, well, all right. Unfortunately, you just used some language that I can't have on the air, so I had to eliminate that. That's what happened there, folks. I understand that people get very emotional when they're telling a story, but there are certain words, the deadly seven, I think they are, that have been articulated that you cannot use on the air, and so we have a special little thing to eliminate that. That's what just happened. He got to a point in the story where he indicated emotionally with a word we couldn't use that he was not about to follow the suggestion of that ghost. Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Good morning. Hello? Wildcard.
Los Angeles?
Yes, Los Angeles.
Hi, how are you? Happy Halloween.
I'm just on.
Okay, this is right.
Okay, turn your radio off first here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's going to be very confusing for you otherwise, because we're putting you directly on the air. So,
It's on.
all right. And what is your first name?
Rebecca?
Rebecca. Go right ahead.
Hi, okay. This happened many, many years ago, and hate to say it, but a friend of mine and I were using a Ouija board, and I since learned not to use Ouija boards, but this was before I knew better.
Yes.
And we were talking to, various spirits, and we eventually got an evil spirit that came on. So we decided, okay, let's get rid of the evil spirit. That was enough for the night. And it kind of freaked us out a little bit. And the evil spirit was basically saying how she wanted to kill my friend, and she was going to get my friend, and all this kind of stuff. So before I left my friend's apartment, while we were doing the Ouija board, I told her, well, I don't know much about this stuff, but I'll try and help you however way I can to, prevent you from being killed. So I left her apartment to go home. It was around 2 in the morning at that time. And I'd taken maybe about 10 steps out of her apartment, and, it's pitch black, no one was up, completely quiet. And all of a sudden, I heard something. It was like someone stood right next to me and screamed in my ear. And what it said was, don't help her, you jerk. Don't help her, you jerk. So, of course, that totally freaked me out. So I ran back to my friend's apartment, and I'm like, don't let me in.
Sure.
So she calmed me down a little bit, and we kind of talked about it. And what she said was that she was going to send her guardian angel home with me to kind of protect me, because now she thought this thing might be after me. So I kind of poo-pooed it. I was like, yeah, right, the guardian angel. But, I figured, why not? Because I didn't really know too much about it. Didn't know if I believed or not.
It was getting late, so I eventually go back up to my car and I start to drive home, and I'm driving along on the freeway. Then all of a sudden, as I'm driving along, bam, right in the passenger seat of my car, this man appeared.
Wow.
Like fully formed, completely solid, not like ghostly, wearing jeans and a shirt. He basically turned towards me, smiled, waved, and then disappeared. And I was like, wow, the guardian angel really did follow me home.
Well, maybe. I mean, these are reasons why you don't screw around with Ouija boards. Because what happens is you open doors that you didn't expect to open and that you cannot close.
Well, I realized that now.
And so I take it now, somebody presented you with a Ouija board and said, let's have some fun. You'd go the other way.
Yeah, exactly. Because I did use the Ouija board a few times after that, but every time I did, I noticed my life would get bad. Bad stuff was happening, and I finally connected it, so I got rid of my Ouija board. And
So you're not a real fast learner.
It's been like 10 years since I've used one, so it's been quite a while.
All right, thank you. It's pretty widely known that years ago I did use a Ouija board. I won't tell the story. It scared me so badly. What occurred scared me so badly. Maybe one day I'll tell the story. Don't use Ouija. Don't screw around with Ouija board. That really is a lesson that you ought not have to learn the hard way. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. In 1958, I was 10 years old. It was a family tradition that we would meet at my grandmother's house on Easter Sunday. My mother was growing up on Friday, and my father was an Atlanta City policeman. A big man, never saw him afraid of anything in his life. He picked me up, and we headed for a small town in Tennessee. On the way up, all my life, and my brothers and sisters, we passed this house that had an iron gate, and we called it the haunted house. My dad's, I stopped. I said, Dad, can we stop and look? And we didn't have anything to do, and he wasn't too eager to get to my grandparents' house too early. So we got out and went in. Dad walked up on the front porch, and I started up a flight of stairs inside. And, like a kid with a little bravado, I ran right to the top of the steps. As soon as I got to the top of the steps, there was about a 3-year-old girl standing looking at me. A little blonde-haired girl, nothing extraordinary about her. And I said, Dad, there's a girl up there. My dad thought maybe some squatters were in the house. And he ran up the steps behind me, and as soon as the little girl saw my dad, she just went straight across the hall into a bedroom and slammed the door. My dad walked up to the bedroom door. My dad was a big man. He was not afraid of anything. He pushed the door. The door pushed him back so hard he almost fell down. That made my dad mad. He got up and gave the door the boot. The door flew off the hinges and we went in the room. It was about a 11 by 11 bedroom, 2 windows going outside, and my dad went over to them and couldn't open either one. There was a closet in the room. My dad opened the closet, and the closet was just full walls, wood panels solid. My dad knocked on everything in the room. He knocked all over the floor, and we found nothing. So my dad and I went back outside, and my mother was related to the sheriff in a small town right where we were. And my dad went down there, and he thought that people were squatting there, and it also argued the little girl might be in some kind of trouble. My dad told the officer there what had just taken place. And the officer went into the chief's office, and the chief was related to my mother. And the chief came out and called my dad and I into another office. And he opened the file cabinet, and he pulled out a file. And the file was a newspaper article. That house had belonged to a doctor that the copper company had brought in there to treat their miners. The doctor was in Atlanta. The doctor's wife evidently had a boyfriend. And the doctor came back to his home. His maid told him that his wife wasn't there, but she was downtown. When he went downtown, he shot the lover, he shot the mother, went back to the house, and shot the little girl, and shot himself.
Oh my God. And so that little girl her spirit or what was left of her remains in that house?
It's all going on to say that people heard the little girl. He shot the maid also, but the little girl was the last alive, and she went running up the steps screaming, and then a gunshot.
Wow. I really appreciate your story, sir, and your call. I don't know, again, what this tells us about life after death. Many ghost stories are associated with violent deaths. Many ghost stories are associated with suicides. In other words, some sort of very traumatic, unfulfilled, unrequited love. All of these things seem to bring about a continued presence. Now, whether this is a contemporary awareness or it's just some sort of echo of what was, it's hard to say. Either way, it certainly is freaky. Wildcard line, you're on the air.
Hello, yes, it's Coast to Coast.
Yes, it is. Ghost to Ghost. Turn your radio off, please.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that.
Okay.
Yes, I'm Kevin Paul. I'm sorry for the line. I'm Kevin in Iroquois Falls, Ontario.
Yes.
And I have to say, the first time I listened to Coast AM, I got to the end and I was listening to older episodes, and I invoked a demon when I listened to Coast AM.
While you were listening to Ghost to Ghost?
Well, I was going to Coast AM after my parents on Pal Talk, and they sent me a link for some of the shows, and I invoked a demon when I was listening to Pal Talk. And his name is JC.
Thank you very much for the call. That's not exactly a ghost story, although there's a little bit of terror certainly involved in it. JC. This is Ghost to Ghost AM. We'll be right back. Fascinating. How many stories from police officers, ER nurses, and doctors, but they don't ever want to be named, or rarely. I'll protect them anyway. Matt from Plainfield, Illinois, says, this is just a fast blast. I used to be a narcotics detective. One night I was called to the scene of a drug-related murder. When I arrived, I saw a man standing over the dead body telling him to get up. Long story short, it was a dead man yelling at his own corpse. We'll be right back. Even though what we're doing tonight are ghost stories, this is really all about whether there is some kind of existence after physical death, right? Barbara says, not that scary, but this is the reason I believe our spirits go on after we leave our physical bodies. In 2000, my ex-wife and I were expecting our youngest son. I was in the Navy at the time. We lived in San Diego. I was on a 6-week exercise in Hawaii when I got a sudden Red Cross message that I needed to get home. My ex-wife had to have emergency surgery, and there was a very good chance she'd lose the baby at 5 months. I was able to get emergency leave and plane ticket, made it to the hospital 21 hours later, just before she went in. The surgery went fine, though there were a few touchy moments, and we went home a few days later. Over the next couple of months, my ex began talking in her sleep. The conversations always sounded friendly, though I could never make out quite what was said. She never talked in her sleep before and didn't say anything about having strange dreams, so I left it alone. She was put on bed rest, and we were at the doctor's office about twice a week. I was worried and prayed every night for my son to be healthy. My ex went into labor, and it was a problem, and then another problem, and a problem after that. There were issues with the pain medication they put her on, problems with monitoring equipment, you name it, it happened. When my son was born, he didn't have a heartbeat, wasn't breathing, and was a light blue color. I think every doctor in the hospital that night was in the room, and I can't say enough good things about them. They placed my son on a cart and ran out of the room. There were people taking care of my ex, trying to make sure she was going to make it, so I went to find my son. I was not familiar with that area of the hospital. And there wasn't anybody around to ask because everybody was trying to either care for my ex or my son. I heard someone call my name on my right side, so assuming it was a doctor, I went towards the sound. Then another voice called my name from down the hall. I'm running down the hall, and the word "here" filled my head. I really can't describe it. I looked, and there was my son being worked on. I walked into the room. The doctor looked at me. He had this look on his face, and I just know it wasn't good. The nurses just looked at me. I began to cry because I knew my son was dead. Now, this is where it all gets a little strange. I noticed a movement out of the corner of my eye. It was very fast, so I looked in that direction. There wasn't anything there. I walked over to where the little baby was and was going to touch him, my hand an inch over his chest. The doctors were doing whatever they were doing a little away from me. They'd totally given up. Then, out of the blue, my son starts slightly moving and lets out this huge, strong cry. Of course, I jumped a little. I lost my balance and began to fall backward. I turned a little, trying to right myself and see the window. Both of my grandmothers were there in the reflection, smiling. And it looked as if they were staring at the table, smiling at my little boy. After that, he did have a few medical problems, a couple of surgeries, fixed a few things. Now, a healthy 7-year-old. The only thing about him is, well, it's strange. He talks from time to time about angels that he sees at night. He says that sometimes they're old ladies, sometimes they're mommy's age, but he says they always look kind of the same. I did find a picture of one of my grandmothers a couple of years ago, and he pointed to it right away and said, "Granny." So I'm sure they came to help. That's our story. Happy Halloween. Eastman Rockies, you are on the air. Good morning.
Mark,
Yes.
this is Wayne from Pennsylvania. You know, and my dad, he had 16 brothers and 5 sisters, and he was the 7th son. And one time, I had he bought me a box of Cracker Jack with a toy in it. And I put it upstairs from my door.
I remember those toys, yes.
And so I was down, played outside a little bit. I was like 8, 7 or 8 years old, and I just had to go up and get it. But then the door was locked. We're still locked on the door. It was like, I couldn't push it open. So I looked